I did everything I could to make my daughter's graduation, but when I got there, it was empty. My ex Amber called me crying about my daughter Bella's graduation. She said, the school needs $3,000 for the graduation package or Bella can't walk. She was sobbing like someone had died. She said it covered the venue, professional photos, and the diploma frame. She said, they'll make her sit in the audience watching all her friends graduate without her. I couldn't stand thinking about Bella sitting there watching everyone else celebrate. Bella had straight A's for 4 years and was debate team captain. She'd been talking about graduation since freshman year. Amber said, you need to pay half by Friday noon, and it has to be cash only. I asked why Bella hadn't called me herself. She said, she's too embarrassed because she doesn't want you to know we can't afford it. That one hurt because my daughter was embarrassed. Amber mentioned her boyfriend's birthday was coming up, but she was using her savings for Bella instead. I knew Amber could lie, but this was about Bella's graduation. I had $43 in my checking account and rent was due. I told her, I'll get the money. She asked, you promise? I said, I always come through for Bella. I begged my boss for double shifts. I said, I need doubles all week, please. He looked at me weird and asked, you sick or something? I said, it's for my daughter. He gave me 3 16-hour shifts. First day, I loaded trucks until my back was killing me, and every box felt heavier than the last. I kept thinking about Bella at graduation. Made $260. Next shift, my hands were bleeding through my gloves and leaving marks on the boxes. My coworker saw and said, Jesus, dude, go home. I kept working because I needed the money. Another $260. Third shift, I could barely walk to my car and threw up in the parking lot from exhaustion. Another $260. I had $780 total, but still needed $720 more. I went to the pawn shop with my dad's watch that he wore in the hospital before he died. The owner said, $200. I told him, it's worth $2,000 because it's a Rolex. He shrugged and started to hand it back. I couldn't fail Bella, so I said, fine, $200. Walking out without that watch hurt bad. I brought everything I owned to my neighbor and he asked, $300 for all of it? I just nodded because I couldn't talk without crying. Still needed $220. I called my brother and begged, I need $600 please. He asked what for and I said, Bella's graduation fee. He said, private schools don't charge graduation fees. I said, please just trust me. He was quiet for a while then said, something's wrong here, but he sent the money anyway. I counted $1,500 in cash and my hands were shaking. Amber texted me to come immediately with cash only. She answered her door wearing a new dress that looked expensive. She grabbed the envelope without looking at me. I asked, what about the receipt? She said, tomorrow the school emails it. I asked, what time for graduation? She said, 2 p.m. at the school auditorium and don't be late. Then she slammed the door in my face. I kept checking my email, but nothing came. Something felt really wrong. When graduation day came, I put on my only suit and drove 2 hours to Bella's school. I got there early and the parking lot was completely empty. No cars or balloons or families or anything. The security guard inside looked confused when I said I was there for graduation. He typed something and said, sir, graduation was last Saturday. Everything went blurry. I called Bella and my hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone. She answered crying so hard she could barely talk. She kept saying, Dad, where were you? Where were you? I looked for you everywhere. It felt like getting stabbed. I said, I'm at your school right now, baby, because mom said graduation was today. She stopped crying and sounded confused. She said, what? Dad, it was last week, last Saturday. Then she said, mom showed me your text saying you had to work. I couldn't breathe. I said, what text? I never sent any text. She said, she showed me on her phone and it said you couldn't miss work. I asked, Bella, did mom say there was a graduation fee? She asked, what fee? I said, $3,000 for you to walk. She said, Dad, graduation was free and completely free. And mom said you couldn't afford gas money to drive here. The security guard showed me last week's program that said free admission and all families welcome. Bella's voice got really small and she said you spent everything on your new girlfriend. I said, there's no girlfriend. And I worked 3 doubles and sold grandpa's hospital watch. Bella went quiet. Then I heard her say, Mom, Dad says he paid you for graduation. I heard Amber yell, hang up now. The line went dead. I found Amber's public Instagram that night showing her at the casino Friday counting $1,500 in chips captioned, thanks to my baby daddy for funding my birthday weekend.